my lovely friends. Today I want to speak about one of the most important things that comes as part of healing yourself therapy sort of question, and that's the popular line, tell me about your childhood. If you've been to therapy, you know that this question will come up all the damn time. It doesn't matter what age you are. You could be 40, you could be 30, you could be 20, you could be a teen. You'll always be asked to talk about your childhood. And the belief is that your childhood determines your worldviews, your relationship with other people, your relationship with yourself, your identity, and all those things. So I just want us to speak a little bit about this tell me about your childhood thing. Personally, I believe a little bit of that to be true, that your childhood determines what type of person or adult you happen to be as you grow up or when you grow up. One of the things that you'd realize when you start connecting with new people, when you reflect back on your own life. Okay, let's start with meeting people. When you meet and you start becoming a bit personal, they're gonna tell you some stories about their childhood, right? They're gonna tell you about some of the highlights of their lives, on both sides, the good and the bad. So the exciting times and the very tough times. And then they're gonna tell you about the things that lingers at the back of their head. You don't even need to ask. As you have conversations, you will pick this up if you are conscious to the things that they're telling you. And you start realizing that these are the things that means the most to them. So then you can start deciding that this is probably why you think the way that you do. This is probably why you like the people or are attracted to the people that you are. This is probably why you have the relationship that you have. This is probably why you are the person that you are. It's because of all these, I call them anchors, all these anchors in your life. You believe are what makes you who you are. When I look at my body, like, I used to be a very active, outdoorsy girl, so I have scars on my knees, a little bit on my hands, not much on the rest of my body, because we fall on our hands and knees oftentimes. If anything, we punch or whatever the case may be, it's going to be on the hands, because we use the hands a lot. We experiment with our hands a lot, or anything that we engage with, we use our hands, so the hands will get scars and stuff as time goes on. And when I look at these things, I see I see them as anchors of my childhood. And there are people who get very excited. If you ask them about one scar on their body, they're gonna tell you everything about their scars on every scar on their body. And they get excited because when they're alone, they don't actually reflect on these scars and tell themselves these stories. So when somebody asks, they get then all excited and tell you about it. Same with the hard stuff, especially because apparently the hard stuff, because they last longer, because they have more damage, let me say, they had a lot of impact. They are the ones we carry out into our adulthood. Personally, I don't really believe in therapy unless there's more than one person involved and you guys need someone to be in the middle of the conversation, to make sure there's peace with the conversation, there's understanding, there's not a lot of frustration and emotions thrown around. Unless that's the case, you have the time to do that on your own, reflect on your own childhood. What I realized is that the stories are there, yes, and it doesn't matter, the time doesn't matter, the year doesn't matter. All that matters is the experience, and that's what we take within us. And like I said, when you meet a person, that's all they tell you about. So clearly those things lives in our heads, those stories lives in our heads. Now if they are creating more damage, they are creating anxiety in your life, they are creating all this darkness and bitterness, and oftentimes it's called post-traumatic stress disorder or whatever. Sometimes they'll tell you, oh no, this is where your depression come from, since your parents divorced, since you were abandoned by whoever, since you experienced rape, what. Personally, I don't want those stories to carry that much weight in my life. And I probably made this decision, let's say 3 years ago, when I realized that this is not healthy. It cannot be that your whole identity revolves around when you were younger. Because the other belief that I have is that the first 20 years of your life aren't yours. People are making decisions for you. They're imposing things on you, imposing fears, ideologies, how to live, what's right, what's not right, what to believe in, what not to believe in. And you carry these things as you grow up. And sometimes the body sort of rebels and it's like, no man, I'm uncomfortable with these decisions that you're making. This is not the real you. You have adopted all these things and you need to find yourself. So I have made that decision that, look, I cannot be an adult that speaks about, oh, when I was a child. Those things don't work. They are not progressive. So my strategy was, I'm going to have to go back in my mind. Every day I do this work in my mind where I go back, not necessarily go back to every day growing up and try to remember stuff. No. I only focus on the anchors, like I said, because these are the stories that we carry. I look into these stories. I'm like, okay, this is what happened, whether it was fun or not, whether it was good or bad or not. Sometimes it's just a reference point, to try and figure out maybe why I think the way I do with certain things. And then along the way of doing this work, I realized the power of story. There is power in story, right? What story comes up? What narrative does it gives you? And what do you trust about the story? And who is telling the story? So what I decided to do was that I was going to take power of the story, even though I'm saying it was not me particularly, because I was still young and people were making decisions for me, and I had to maneuver within those confined spaces and environments and ways of thinking and those things. So I decided that, look, I'm going to look into these stories that are anchors of my life. They're probably multiple, probably 10 or less. It's usually not a lot. It's just that they carry so much weight. I'm going to look at these stories. I'm going to look at them objectively, because I'm a different person now. I'm a different version of myself, so I can peek into those environments and experiences and watch them like I was watching a movie, and then, like as any movie that you watch, you're gonna need to take in that story, the narrative, and frame it in a way that helps you move forward. And because we're speaking about mental health, you're gonna need to move forward healthily, and because the stories are not gonna go anywhere, you're gonna have to reframe the narrative of those stories. And more than anything, you must go back to those stories to learn, because clearly they are part of your identity. They're not going anywhere, so you need to start telling yourself the story. There's a certain way that you tell yourself the story, and sometimes it causes anxiety and all the negative emotions, the dark emotions, and you spiral down. But as you work on these stories, you start changing the narratives of the story. You start even liking the story. You enjoy, start visiting the story, But the best thing that you need to do is understand that who you are is because of how you narrate that story to yourself and others, and I think this is one thing therapists don't do. To be honest, I've been in the therapy room multiple times at different ages, twice, two periods in my life, when I was about 19 and when I was a bit younger, maybe 6, 7 there. So I have been in the therapy room and I sort of get the gist, and it's whatever. I don't think it did anything for my life, more than me having to do the work for myself. So yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say for now. I think this is a conversation I'll continue to have, but you need to reframe the stories about you and your life in a way that is empowering for you. I like I said, I don't care how bad or damaging the experience was when you were younger. I just do not want to be an adult that holds on to 20 years ago, 15 years ago, and I continue to grow old with these stories. They are not helping anyone. They are not helping me for shit. So I am changing those narratives of the stories. I am the teller of the story. I'm the one that experienced the story. If it was a movie, I'd be the director and I'd be the main character. So why can't I change? Why can't I change the narrative of that story to make sure that it is valuable for the viewer, which is me again, because I go back into my memory and look into these anchors of stories in my life. I need to then change the narrative of the story to suit my current vision for myself. So I think that's very liberating. If it's an exercise that you think is important for you to do, please try it. Let me know if you have been drafting damaging narratives about the stories of your life. And of course, I'm able to do this now because I am learning now that, look, even though we want soft life and a good life, it does not come just from the greatest people that we look up to are people who come from bad backgrounds and hardships, and we all go through them. So the best thing that you can do is put them together as material to build you move forward with a healthy mind. I keep saying that a depressed person is a person who is overwhelmed with all of these negative stories in their previous experiences, and that's what's weighing them down. So you need to go back and dismantle these stories. Sometimes you need to do it as it happens so that you don't end up with a backlog that overwhelms you and drive you into darkness. I didn't want to make this video too long, so I'm going to stop it here. Thanks for tuning in. As always, leave a comment. Please do like if you're appreciating my content. Share it if you enjoy it as a conversation starter amongst your friends and family. Cheers, I'll see you on the next one.